Hi everyone, it's Miss Terry, and today I'm here to talk about my November picks for students in grades 7 through 8. We'll talk about some fiction, and then we'll talk about some graphic novels, and then some nonfiction. This first one is called Instructions for Dancing by Nicola Yoon, and this is a story about a girl named Evie. And Evie has kind of given up on love because one day when she watched a couple kiss, she could see their entire romance play out in her head, including the absolute destruction of it. And this kind of has really soured her and the whole idea of romance, now that she can look at people and see how things go badly. And she ends up getting involved with a dance studio and a boy named X who's the complete opposite of her. He's very passionate. He really loves to take risks, and that's really not Evie very much, but he kind of convinces her to enter a ballroom dancing contest with him. And she agrees. And next thing you know, she's learning the waltz and the foxtrot and desperately trying to figure out if love is worth the risk. So that's Instructions for Dancing. Neil is a story that's ripped right out of the headlines. It's a story about a boy named Russ who lives in a town that's really one of those places that you want to get out of. And he feels that football is his ticket to a better life. And he plays really well, and he's a star on the football team with his best friend, Marion. And then one day, some of his white teammates say some nasty things to him and Marion, and a fight breaks out. And instead of everyone getting in trouble for these behaviors, Marion is the one who is arrested and charged with a crime. And Russ really feels that this is unfair, that it was kind of everybody instigating and that they all should take the blame. And so one day during a football game, he decides to kneel during the national anthem, and this causes an uproar in his community. He falls from football stardom, and he realizes that he's going to have to make some very tough choices to stand up for what he believes in. So that's called Kneel. Parked is a story about a girl named Jeannie Ann and a boy named Cal. And Cal kind of lives with his mom in this very wealthy neighborhood. He likes to say that he lives in a glass box. His house is ginormous. It has huge windows, and it overlooks a parking lot that's has some different campers and parked cars there. And that's when he spies Jeannie Ann, who's living with her mom in their car. And the two of them strike up in unlikely friendship as the two of them discover the differences in their lives, but also how they are all the same. It's called Parked. Fire with Fire is the story for dragon lovers. This is about two sisters, Danny and Eden, and they are dragon hunters, dragon slayers really. It's their job to hunt down and slay dragons that are threatening their world, until one day Danny actually meets a dragon and she realizes that everything she has learned about dragons is probably not true. And what she should be doing is protecting them from those that would hunt them. Well, her sister is totally dead set against this, thinks Danny's crazy for even considering this notion, and decides that she'll stop at nothing to get Danny back into the fold of what is right, and that is slaying dragons. So she ends up turning to a group of sorcerers to help her bring her sister back, and with some rather devastating consequences. It's called Fire with Fire. If you love dragon stories, you definitely will enjoy this. It's also a really good conflict between sisters. Samira Surfs is a story of a young girl who has fled her war-torn home in Bosnia. Her and her family have fled down the river to Bangladesh. She lost several family members in that journey, and now she's living in a refugee camp, and she spies a group of girls surfing, and she discovers that this is what she really wants to do, and she starts learning how to surf as she's waiting for her family to find a new home and a new place to be. If you like sports stories, you probably will enjoy this, but if you also enjoy reading about stories about refugees and how they're trying to find their place in the world, you also will enjoy this. It's also a good girl power story. Dragonfly Girl falls into the sci-fi category. It kind of reminds me sometimes a little bit of Spider-Man in that super genius kind of youngster. It's about a girl named Kira who's living with her mom who's very sick. They're having a hard time with bills, debt is piling up, and Kira is just desperate to help her family. And she ends up deciding to enter to get a job, and she goes to work for Dr. Gregory Munn, who is a scientist, and she kind of gets this internship, and it's just really kind of cleaning up after the other scientists. But she is obsessed with science herself, and she has some of her own ideas of things that could make the world a better place. And one night when she's kind of experimenting after the lab closes, she brings a rat back to life, and now everyone in the science community thinks that she can discover the cure for death, and she begins to be hunted by those who wish to use that power to her advantage. So that's called Dragonfly Girl. Speak for Yourself is the story of Skylar, who really wants to go away to college, but she needs money to do that. So she's developed an app that she'd like to enter into it's called the Scholastic X Nationals competition, which is kind of the nerdiest competition around. And in order to do this, she needs a team. So she gets two of her friends, Joey and Zane, to help her out. And Joey has asked for Skylar's help in getting together with Zane, and she's not really sure she wants to do that, but she's kind of desperate. She really needs these people on her team, so she agrees. Next thing you know, she's starting to have feelings for Zane herself, and things are just getting all mixed up. So it's called Speak for Yourself. World in Between is another refugee story, and it's about a boy named Kenan who lives in Bosnia. And he is, he really loves to play soccer. He really is happy with his friends and his family. And then war comes to his community, and his family gets basically trapped in their home for almost 10 months as they're trying to escape to the United States and find refuge there. And this is a story of what that's like to live in such a war-torn place, and then to later find a new life. It's called World in Between. Enduring Freedom is the story told from two different points of view. One is Joe, and he's a National Guard member that's been stationed in Afghanistan. And then also a 16-year-old boy named Bahir, who, when Joe gets there, he kind of has a negative opinion of the Afghanis that are living in the place where he is. He's not really interested in them. He thinks they're kind of a pain. He doesn't understand why they're there. And then he does meet Bahir, and Bahir is very interested in the Americans. He wants to learn English. He wants to share his community with them, and the two of them form an unlikely friendship that really helps both of them understand what is happening in their world. It's called Enduring Freedom. If you like military stories, you definitely will enjoy this. And then the last fiction one I'm going to talk about, this one is called What Lives in the Woods. And it's a story about a girl named Ginny who really is looking forward to a summer hanging out with her best friends, maybe doing a little writing, when her dad announces that they're going to be spending the month in Michigan at a place called Woodmore Manor. They're going to be fixing it up. And when they arrive, Ginny is instantly kind of disturbed by the house. It's very run down. It's rather spooky. There's a lot of mysterious whisperings about what has happened there. There's a very strange mannequin that seems to have a mind of its own living in the house. There's definitely some noises coming from in the walls, and she is determined to find out what exactly is happening. This is definitely a little bit on the creepy side. You might want to read it with the lights on. All right, let's look at some of the graphic novels. This first one is a manga. It's called Kageki Shoujo, The Curtain Rises, and this is about two young girls, Watanabe Sarasa, who has always dreamed about being an actress, playing the male roles in an all-female theater troupe, and then also Narata Ai, who has a dream of really, she just kind of wants to ignore men altogether. Shows they end up at an exclusive theater boarding school where the two of them meet and start to act in the plays and musicals there, and then the curtain rises and their stardom begins. Borders is the story about a boy who is setting out with his mom to find a new home. When they reach the border, they're kind of asked, okay, what is your nationality? And they announce that they're Blackfoot, indigenous people, and they are immediately kind of trapped between two countries, as neither one really recognizes their culture or their people, and they are trying to figure out what they should do next. Again, this is a graphic novel. Camp Whatever is a story about a girl named Willow who really doesn't want to go to her dad's weird old summer camp or the creepy little town that it's in, but that's exactly what they're going to be doing as their dad takes over and tries to get the camp up and running. But soon Willow finds herself at the camp trying to help her dad, but also involved in some mysteries that involve some stolen snacks, some suspected vampires, and missing campers as they're trying to figure out what is hiding in the fog that covers this camp and a generation of secrets. So again, a little bit on the scary side. Witch for Hire is actually kind of a fun high school story. It's about a girl named Faye, and Faye is not very popular, and she's really okay with that. She ends up kind of sitting what she calls the loser table at school with some quirky friends of hers when a new freshman comes, whose name is Cody. And Cody actually finds some friendship with Faye and her ragtag group of friends at lunch until some horrible pranks start happening at school. And Cody actually admits to doing these pranks in her attempts to become popular. And what she doesn't realize is Faye is actually a witch, and she's going to use some spells to see what is actually going on with Cody and why these pranks seem to become more and more dangerous. This is kind of a fun take on like Mean Girls and Nancy Drew, as there's some mystery involved with a little bit of witchcraft. This next one is a good fan if you are a superhero nut. This one is called Ayanu, Child of Wonder. And this is about a girl who really, she's an orphan. She doesn't really have any memory of her past, but she suddenly discovers that she has these kind of hidden abilities, and she's desperately going to need them as she tries to fight what's called the corrupt, which are these cursed wildlife and strange divine beasts that are trying to destroy her world and all of humanity. And Ayanu realizes that it's up to her to save the planet. Fantastic Tales of Nothing is the story of a young boy named Nathan who thinks he's human, but he might not actually be as human as he thinks. And in his world, humans are not supposed to have any magic whatsoever. And he finds himself transported to this place called Nothing, where he meets a strange creature, and suddenly he is on the run from those who wish to hunt down this creature and destroy them. And Nathan discovers that maybe he's not so unmagical after all. If you like Dungeons and Dragons and stories like that, you probably will enjoy this book. City of Dragons is about a girl named Grace who ends up moving to Hong Kong with her mom and her stepdad, and she's really worried about making friends and what, but then she ends up getting gifted a dragon egg from an older lady at the market, and it turns out that this dragon egg is real, especially when it hatches. Now, the dragon that comes out has immense power that Grace is going to desperately need to learn how to control in order to keep it from destroying all of Hong Kong and those who wish to hunt the dragon for its power. Called City of Dragons. And the last title I have is another manga. This one is called Fiancé of the Wizard, and it's about a girl named, I have to read this name, it's Philomena Via Adina, who was the daughter of nobility, but then she awoke in one day to realize that she had actually been reborn into a world of sorcery and wizards, and she ends up becoming the fiance of a young wizard, and she's not really sure this is what she wants or whether or not this could be the life she's always sought. So this is the first in the series. There are others at the library as well. Let's look at some nonfiction. This first one is called We Must Not Forget. It is Holocaust stories of survival and resistance. So it tells even more stories of the children who survived the Holocaust, whether they went to a concentration camp, whether they lived in hiding throughout the war. It's about kids who escaped the Nazis and somehow managed to survive out in the woods, or really just kind of kept hidden as much as possible. And this is a compilation of different stories of those who did survive. A Shot in the Arm is a part of the big ideas that changed the world, and this looks all about something that would be close to our hearts right now, is what it's like to develop a vaccine, and how did vaccines from the past influence what's happening today. It's written in a graphic novel format, and it does include some of the COVID-19 research. So if you're interested in learning more about the pandemic and the vaccine, or just the history of pandemics and what scientists have done in order to save us. Gun Stories is a collection of stories that have life-changing experiences with guns. So each of the different stories in here talk about how a gun played a role in whether a good way or a bad way, most often in a bad way, and how those were affected by the gun in their stories. Fighting Fires is another collection of stories for those of you who might be fireman enthusiasts. This one is the 10 of the deadliest fires in American history and how we fought them. So it talks about how the fires broke out, what firefighters had to do in order to stop them, the kind of damage that was done, as well as a lot of stories of heroism. So it's called Fighting Fire. The Thrifty Guide to Ancient Greece is actually part of a series. You don't have to read them in any sort of order, but it's kind of a historical look at the ancient Greeks, but told in a way as if you were going to go on vacation and you decided, hey, I'm going to time travel and go back to ancient Greece. What kind of things do I need to know in order to have a lovely vacation? So it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek, a little bit on the humorous side, while it gives you lots of great information about the Greeks and what it would have been like to live then. I don't know, maybe you will be inspired to build a time machine in order to go back. Personally, I think you probably end up rather staying here. I have two drawing books. These are both for drawing manga. This one is drawing manga faces and bodies, and this one is drawing manga mecha, weapons, and wheels. So if you're interested in creating your own Japanese comic books, or you really like to learn how to draw, these will give you step-by-step instructions, including the tools that you need. I always seem to open to that page, but also how to draw the things that are included in a lot of those different stories. It gives you different techniques and such. This next one is called Shoe Dog. It's actually a young reader's version of an adult book. It's by Phil Knight, and Phil Knight is the owner of Nike, and it talks about how he built his company into what it is today. He actually started out as a basketball player, wasn't very good. He got kicked off the team, so his mom suggested that he go out for track, and he really enjoyed that, and he discovered that he really wanted to start a business with fast shoes, and he borrowed $50 from his dad so that he could import shoes from Japan and sell them to his friends, and that's actually how Nike began. So if you're interested in, if you are a big Nike fan, or if you're just really interested in an entrepreneur, you definitely will enjoy Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. The Boy Who Became Dragon is a Bruce Lee story, and it talks about Bruce Lee and what his life was like. He was born in November 27th, 1940, in Hong Kong, right before the Japanese pretty much took over. So he endured a lot of bullying and danger growing up, and he turned to martial arts in order to save him until he became the megastar that he is. This is actually written in graphic novel format as well. So if you enjoy Bruce Lee movies, if you like Kung Fu, then you would enjoy this biography of him. Warhead is another true story of one teen who almost saved the world, and this is about Jeff, who's kind of your average 15-year-old, until he discovers that he has a brain tumor and his life expectancy is rather short, and he ends up basically doing kind of like a Make-A-Wish foundation, and he asks to go to Russia in order to meet with Mikhail Gorbachev. Now this book takes place during the Cold War, so America was very concerned that Russia was going to bomb us with a nuclear bomb, and he thought that maybe he could stop that, and so he used his wish in order to go over to Russia and hopefully prevent war between Russia and the United States. It's called Warhead. Very inspiring story of a young man trying to make a difference. And then the last nonfiction one I'm going to talk about today is called Creative Lettering and Beyond. So this is inspiring tips, techniques, and ideas for hand lettering your way to beautiful works of art. And it gives you different ideas. Oh, empty page. Please don't write in library books. There might be some empty pages in this book. But this one gives you some different ideas on how to do some digital writing, but also how to make your own temporary tattoos. And then it also gives you step-by-step instructions on different ways to write fancy lettering. Okay, so if you like art books but aren't quite into like drawing people in cars and things like that, creative lettering might be a good outlet for you. I hope you find something to enjoy.